Jeep Wrangler owners have like the little Jeep wave when they see one another as you're passing by, but I feel that as a Land Rover Defender, you need something that's a little bit less pedestrian. So if you're driving along and you see another Defender, there's some way that you should be able to acknowledge one another as you're passing by. Maybe something like this. Take your little teacup, finger out, called the Defender sip. So see somebody driving another high-class vehicle such as yourself, as you're driving along, you've got your tea. Cheerio. A couple years ago, I drove the Land Rover Defender 110. It was the X Dynamic, and instantly became one of my favorite vehicles I've driven, if not my favorite SUV of all time. I really just loved the way that vehicle looked, how it drove, just the presence on the road, everything about it. I have absolutely loved it, and I love seeing them on the road. There's not too many of them, especially out this way in the London, Ontario area. You don't see too many Defenders, but when you do notice it. This, my friends, is a 2024 Land Rover Defender 130 Outbound. Now, this is a unique trim for the 130, the extended full-size vehicle, and it's more geared towards people that don't necessarily need people hauling capabilities, but cargo hauling. And I've posted this on social media, had some people joke about how this looks like a very upscale, very posh version of a white panel van, because you'll notice at the back, the typical windows that we would find there, the windows that actually made the Land Rover Defender so iconic with this generation, are not present. There is no Land Rover badge, there is no reinforced area to put cargo accessories. The whole thing essentially is for cargo accessories. And if you look on the inside, you go into the trunk space, you can see the windows are still there. The USB ports are still there, the vents are still there, even the third row sunroof is still there, but there's no seats, because the Outbound is for the type of person that does want to go off-roading, does do outdoor adventure things, but doesn't need to put more than 4 or 5 people in the vehicle. And that's what this is good at doing. Now, I would have preferred the 3-row, but it's good to be able to test out different versions of the Defender, and this has been a real treat this week to be able to drive. So let's go over some of the basics, because we have featured the Defender before, and if you want to know absolutely everything there is to know about it, I did do a very comprehensive video on it. It will be linked throughout, but we're going to talk about some of the key aspects of this, what makes this different from the 110, and also what makes the Outbound different from other 130s. Under the hood, we have a 3-liter turbocharged straight-six engine, and it also is a mild hybrid. Produces 395 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque, and comes with one of the best transmissions you can get on the market, a ZF 8HP 76 8-speed automatic transmission. So all of that's pretty much the same. They do have a V8 version, but it's not on the 130 here in Canada. And again, the P400 is all you can get for this specific configuration. So how does the 130 compare? I mean, this thing is huge. It is 5.38 meters long, or 17 feet and 8 inches. I mean, that is huge. It is Cadillac Escalade level of length. That is about 36 centimeters longer than the 110, or about 1.2 feet. And all of that is in the cargo space. So essentially, they've just added on that extra length to the rear end. So the wheelbase hasn't changed. It's the same wheelbase as a 110. You're just getting more cargo capacity. And again, because we don't have the third rows on the Outbound, you do get a little bit more cargo capacity than you would otherwise. So the rear space there is fantastic. If you really do need a massive vehicle to put large items in, this is the way to go. Plus, with those panels on the side, you can use all of the Land Rover accessories that go on the sides of the vehicles, but you can have more of them, and you can place them in better positions. So again, if you really are doing outdoorsy stuff, you want to put things on the roof, you want to put things on the sides, you want to put things in the trunk, this is the vehicle to do it in, because they really don't make anything that is more rugged than this Defender 130 Outbound. Now, as I mentioned, we've talked about the Defender before. We're going to go on the road now, talk about how this compares, talk a little bit about some of the changes on the inside, and everything else you need to know if you're in the market for the 2024 Land Rover Defender 130 Outbound. We're on the road now with the Land Rover Defender, and I have to say that I absolutely love this thing. It is quite enjoyable to drive, and just reminds me of why I originally liked this vehicle so much, because it takes what was already great about the Defender and just makes it even better, even longer. And yeah, okay, it's a little bit of a problem parking at places because it is so big, and you've got that huge spare tire on the back, so adds to the length of it. The camera sits underneath it, but what can you do? But let's talk a little bit about the interior here, because things have changed oh so slightly in the last couple of years. We have a new infotainment screen. Software is pretty much the same thing, maybe a little bit more updated. Feels pretty good, but now the screen is larger. Before, it actually sat in between the little handlebars and the lower part of the dash area here, so it was kind of recessed into it. Much smaller, much more wide screen. This does feel like an iPad that just happens to be stuck on the top, but it's fine. It works out pretty well. Yeah, you kind of need to have an engineering degree in order to get familiar with all the features and everything in the vehicle, figuring out how to control everything, but eventually you do get used to it and you start to realize exactly how this vehicle is put together and how everything works. So I just like that there's physical buttons everywhere. We've got plenty of buttons. They work exactly like any other Land Rover or Range Rover does. You push the button to change the temperature of your seats, and you can go to heat and ventilation, and there's heat and ventilated seats in the back seats too, with quad zone climate control. You've got all the luxury features that you would want out of this. This does have the head-up display, so I'm actually able to test it out. One of the things that I said I wish I had on the previous one that we drove, bingo bango, it's here. And then the rear view camera mirror. I mean, I complained that it was a little too high out before, but I don't think I put myself in the right perspective when I was driving that, because I don't care who's behind me. They don't matter to me. When I'm driving a Defender, I'm the only person that matters, so you get out of my way. That's how it works. This thing is so big that if you can't see it, that's really your problem. You shouldn't be driving on the road. But yeah, camera works great. You know, the 360 cameras on here are really good. Again, having a larger screen allows for just a little bit more screen real estate, obviously, to be able to see the camera. So yeah, I mean, everything that was great about the Defender before is so much better now. Now, yes, this Outbound here is designed for a very specific type of buyer. Somebody who doesn't necessarily need to have all the space of passenger capabilities, but you want to have cargo capabilities, and that is really what this excels at, because almost any other vehicle in this segment or in this size category, they always come with the third row. It's hard to delete that out of the build, so having a full trim that's designed for that type of buyer is critical. And I think that they will sell them. I think that people who are looking at some sort of differences when it comes to the Defender are going to appreciate having this as an option. It's not for everybody, that's for sure. I don't think you're going to see a ton of these Outbounds on the road. But if you see one, you know, chances are it's going to be somebody who needs it for that very specific purpose of doing a lot of off-roading stuff. Now, it would have been fun had JLR Canada given us some of the accessories to put on the vehicle. Yeah, I might have found a way to go out and explore the wilderness with this week if I had that. But even the way that this is set up, you've got those off-road tires, your larger blacked out rims look really good. This really looks like an Imperial Stormtrooper because it's so white with the Fiji White paint and then the black accents everywhere. I just love it. I mean, I can't get enough of how awesome this vehicle looks. So again, styling points, 100%, love it. The interior comfort, fantastic. I sit very well. I sit very high up as well. I do feel like I'm in like an HD pickup truck. You do sit so high up. I do still have a little bit of headroom here. You can see maybe 2 or 3 inches. Seat is as low as it goes, and I am 6 foot. So you know, you've got plenty of space there. Seats have much more capability for movement. So you know, if you're a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, whatever it may be, you've got the options there. Second row, fit back there no problem, and it's great having all those features. So there's really nothing missing on the inside of this. When I look at other sort of top-end vehicles like this, you're getting essentially all the features that you would want. All the safety tech is here. You know, it's got adaptive cruise control and blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, all the stuff that you would expect to find. You've got all the 360 cameras and parking sensors that you could ask for. I mean, there's not anything that's really missing when it comes to this vehicle. So what does it ultimately come down to? Is it worth $113,000 Canadian? $112,000 plus, it's about $4,000 for the luxury tax if you're here in Canada. So it really is like $116,000 plus HSD, so add that on as well. I would say yes, absolutely. I mean, you're really competing at this level with something like a G-Wagon, and obviously the Mercedes G-Wagon isn't as big as this, so if you need the extra length, then there's no other choice for you. You know, we've driven the Ford Bronco since driving this. It's a good vehicle. It's not a luxury vehicle. It certainly doesn't have the same storage capabilities as this. And for the most part, the fuel efficiency isn't terrible. You know, we talked about it a little bit when we were talking about the vehicle originally, when we first drove it back in Actonville. Now, obviously, our testing has changed quite a bit because we're using a completely different route, and you know, it's kind of different temperature out here today. But we completed our 100-kilometer test loop in eco mode in 11.4 liters per 100 kilometers. So not quite as good as what we did in Actonville, but again, it was a different type of test. So, you know, benchmarking it compared to other vehicles, we'll have to do a lot more data. But something like the Toyota Grand Highlander that we just did, which was like what, 9.6, I think, 9.4 maybe. It was a hybrid, you know, it was an actual hybrid system, whereas this is just a mild hybrid, and this thing is way heavier. So, you know, not bad overall. So I think fuel efficiency isn't too bad. I have used up half a tank of gas, and I've probably only driven 250 kilometers at the most. So, you know, it's going to cost you some, but that's what you get when you buy something like this. So that's not a problem. But when it comes to the drive and ride, I mean, performance is decent. It's got quite a bit of horsepower. It sounds enormous when you floor it, but the ride comfort is pretty good. Now, the trade-off from this becoming a unibody is better ride. We do have the off-road tires on here, and we've also got the full off-road kit. So we've got, you know, a lot more control over the off-road capabilities on this. And yeah, I mean, it still drives and rides really smooth for what it is. Is it the most comfortable? No. But if you compare it to something like a Wrangler, this is way better. Much smoother on the road, a lot more forgiving if you're on tarmac. Again, I don't have the ability to test it off-road, so I can't tell you how it is there. But again, you know, most people, I think they're going to be buying this because they want something that works for 95% of their day-to-day trips, and then maybe they do have a cottage or some area that they do some recreational stuff in, so they want to have a vehicle that is capable on dirt and even mud, things like that. This will be fine. There's tons of options within the terrain modes. We've talked about it before. You can go check that out in the video that we did on the Defender 110, because aside from that, nothing much has really changed in that department. I mean, it is still the Defender that I absolutely loved, just way longer. I mean, you notice it. I actually have to be very careful. I found with the other Defender, just because it was, you know, the wheels were so close to the edges, giving you really good ground, you know, clearance, obstacle clearance if you're going over things, right? The approach angles were fantastic on that vehicle. This is not quite as good. So again, this isn't the best off-road capabilities that you could have, just because you have way more length at the back. The wheels are in the same position, so your exit clearance not quite as good. So keep that in mind. And I've even found too, coming out of parking lots and things like that, I'm just a little bit more cautious when I'm making those turns, just because the rear end is a little, it's more like a school bus, right? Because the wheels are a little bit further away from the back end, but you get used to it right away. Honestly, there's nothing to complain about this thing. I absolutely love it. I love the one before. I love this one. I would get it in a different color, even though I do like Stormtroopers. I do like the Empire. I just think that there's better color options for this. You want to stand out a little bit more than having it all white and look like just a glorified utility van. But let me know in the comments below what you think of the Land Rover Defender. Is the 130 something that's on your radar? Is this a vehicle that you would be considering? What would you be comparing this to, other than things like the Wrangler, the Bronco, and the Mercedes G-Wagon? There's not much choice when it comes to full off-road spec SUVs. But let me know in the comments below. We do try to get back to everybody. I do invite you to subscribe to the channel, as well as give this video a like and share it online, as it helps us grow our channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.